Hello class, today we're going to be talking about ecology and ecosystems. So, what is ecology? Ecology is the study of connections in nature between the biotic and abiotic components. I know a lot of this is going to be a review from freshman year bio, but we're going to go over it anyway. If you remember from freshman year bio, biotic are the living things and abiotic are the non-living components. So bio actually means living, and so bio here means living, and abiotic is non-living. And we'll go over some examples of those in a little bit here. When studying ecology, there's different levels that we can focus on. We can focus on the individual or that individual organism, or we can study the population of organisms, or we can start looking at the community, which is, if we read here, the populations of different species living in a particular place and potential interactions with each other. So it's how multiple populations are interacting with one another. And then an ecosystem is a community of different species interacting with one another and with their non-living environment, in the non-living environment. So now we're talking and bringing in some of the abiotic factors, right? Maybe like the nitrogen cycle, the water cycle, weather, all those different weather phenomena, and how they're affecting the populations that are interacting with one another. And the largest form of ecology or organization would be the biosphere. And these are the parts of the Earth's air, water, and soil where life is found. So what three factors sustain life on Earth? And there are three factors that we're going to look at. One of them is the one-way flow of energy. Okay, so we're going to be looking at food chains and food webs. As you can see here, we have a food chain, the sun giving its energy to the trees giving its energy to the rabbit to the snake, and snake to the eagle. And if you can see, as we go up in the food chain, there's some energy that's lost due to heat at each level. And as you go up in the food chain, notice how there's less available energy as we go up. And we're going to talk about energy flow and how the amount of energy available at each level of the food chain decreases as we go up. And the reason for that is because, a lot of these organisms are using that energy, and that energy is lost due to heat from their respiration and all their daily activities. The second is the round-trip cycling of matter or nutrients through the biosphere. There are 5 cycles that we're going to be experts in. One of the most important is the nitrogen cycle. And if you notice here, we have, sulfur is in a cloud, carbon is in a cloud, water is in a cloud, nitrogen is in a cloud, and then phosphorus. I know this looks like a pile of poo here, but it's really like a rock. And so what this is telling me and telling you is that all 4 of these cycles have a stage at some point in time in the atmosphere. The phosphorus cycle is the only cycle that we're going to study that does not have a stage in the atmosphere. Okay? So phosphorus never enters the atmosphere. These other 4 do. And the third is gravity. Okay? So remember I mentioned earlier, just kind of revisiting the biotic and abiotic factors. We know biotic are the living or once living, and abiotic are the non-living components of an ecosystem. And we got a cool picture here of this owl camouflaged into this tree here. Pretty awesome picture. Okay. Next, we're going to take a look at some symbiotic relationships. And I know you guys remember these from biology, but we are going to review them. So the first is mutualism. And we have 2 positive signs here because both organisms will benefit in a mutualistic symbiotic relationship. The second is commensalism. Commensalism is when one species benefits while the other is neither harmed or benefited. So it doesn't benefit and it's not harmed either. And the third would be parasitism. That pop up here, I think it's getting blocked by this little window here. Let's see if I can hide that. There we go. Yeah, so parasitism is when one organism benefits and the other is harmed. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take, oh, what am I doing here? Let's get out of that. We're going to take a look at some examples. This is still doing that. Hold on. Okay, there we go. All right. So in your packet, you should see these different symbiotic relationships. I'd like for you to pause the video right now, read through them, and see if you can identify whether or not they're commensalism, parasitism, or mutualism. Pause the video now. If we take a look at these, a dog and a flea, P for parasitism. The fungus and algae would be mutualism. A termite and the bacteria is going to be mutualism. A shark and the remora, commensalism. Commensalism and parasitism. Hopefully you got all those correct. All right. A niche or a niche. This term can be pronounced either way, niche or niche. And a niche or a niche is a species or a species role in its environment. Okay? It's its preferred habitat, position in the food web, and its mating and eating behaviors. Okay? Another concept that we're going to study is a concept called resource partitioning. And this is when species kind of uh, avoid competition by dividing the use of resources. So they've kind of co-evolved with one another to kind of occupy a different niche or a different niche. And what this does is it limits competition with other species, right? These still species, the yellow rumped warblers are still going to compete with one another, but at least this warbler isn't going to compete with this warbler because this warbler is, getting seeds and nesting in the bottom part of this tree, while the Cape May warbler, its niche is going to be, in the top parts of these trees, and so it'll, feed and nest up here, so they will only compete with each other and not with the yellow-rumped warblers, if that makes sense. And there is something called the competitive exclusion principle. And what this states is if competition is present, species will be excluded from niches they might otherwise be able to inhabit. So as you can see, we have two different types of barnacles here. When there's only one barnacle present, we can see this brown barnacle is occupying a larger area of rock, right? It's occupying the low tide area and also the high tide area. Okay, so that would be the what we call the fundamental niche, right? It's possible niche. It can occupy low tide and it can occupy high tide. But if there's another barnacle present here, for example, in this picture here, this blue barnacle, these blue barnacles will outcompete the brown barnacle in the low tide area. But the brown barnacle will still occupy this high tide area, and we call that the actual niche, right? So when there is competition, the niche will shrink, right? And so when these two barnacles are present, they're not going to be able to occupy the entire face of the rock. So that is it for this introduction into ecology. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, let's chat in class. Bye, guys.